welcome to the stage our host of our next panel, Mr. Greg Bakun.
How's everyone doing tonight? I'm not convinced. Wow. So I just want to introduce myself real fast. My name is Greg Bakun. I do a nightly radio show on locally KTNF AM 950 called Ghostbox Radio. It's a nightly paranormal radio show. We talk about all sorts of stuff that you need to wear a tinfoil hat for. And we'd like to, if I had any cards, I'd put them out there for you to see. But as I'm pretty well organized, I don't. But our main reason for being here tonight is, and I'm excited for this. Are you all excited for this? Who's doing that? All right, good. All right. I wanted to see, like who are gonna get escorted out of here. So I'm very excited tonight. One of our guests of honors, we're going to be talking to Miss Lisa Bowerman.
Turned up. Well done.
Now we didn't talk about it. We talked so much before. I wasn't sure. Do you want to sit there or you want to sit here?
I'm happy here.
Well, I mean, This isn't my best side. Oh, no, I said this is my best side. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so this is already going well. So
I got to sit down. That's what I'm going to do. Hello. There's only one thing between us, and it's quite big. Would you like some water?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. In back home, they'd say for tea, like who's playing mother, right?
Oh, yeah. I say Morty Vicar. There we go.
Thank you.
Ooh, that's a good start. Sorry, talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, we're just sorting out the water situation right now. So this is how it's going to work. We're allowing people to ask questions tonight, right? Because I don't see a mic up there. So still raise your hand or whatever if you have questions for Lisa. But I'll get things settled. First of all, welcome to Minnesota.
Thank you very much indeed.
Now, have you been here before?
Never.
Okay.
Never. I mean, the closest was Chicago, which I've been to a couple of times.
Which is beautiful.
Very good.
Very
nice. Lovely, great city.
Now, are you going to be able to check out anything? Do you have time after the convention or anything?
Well, I've already hit a couple of the shops. Your Mall of America, which is really a mall, of America, is very impressive. And then today I was on a special mission for a friend who was desperate for some particular types of chocolate from Target. So I was saying to Target, and they didn't have any. And then I wanted to go to my favorite store, which is a very sad situation because my favorite store is the Container Store. And I bought up the Container Store, and then very kindly Jennifer, who was looking after me today, drove back. She went, "There's another Target!" So we got to another Target, and I got my chocolate. So this is as exciting as it gets in Minneapolis for me at the moment. So,
so
this is good. This is good.
We got to be serious though now. What kind of chocolates are these?
These are Brookside, Acai, and is that how you pronounce it? And blueberry.
What?
Acai and blueberry in dark chocolate by Brookside, and in fact, I sadly bought one for myself because I've heard so much about them, and they're very nice. But we can't get them in the UK, so.
And don't ask me how to pronounce stuff. I've been pronouncing your name wrong all day, so it's just fine. Not Bowerman, Lisa.
Oh yes, I just answer to anything. I blame my father. I'm Lisa with an S.
Right.
So not Liza with a Z, Lisa with a.
And for the unintelligent like myself, it really throws me off.
So. Everybody. As long as I answer to anything, frankly.
My name is spelt wrong, by the way. Spelt wrong, Jason. Just gonna say. I'm sorry to bring the mood down. Wasn't intentional. What's that? Incorrectly. So, Baken. Yeah, I know. All right, let's get to talking to you because it is kind of the reason they're here. And once again, folks, if anyone has any questions, there is a microphone, the magic microphone. Put up line, and I will start the conversation. One of the things that I know that you love, and I don't know how often you do it anymore. I'm very curious. Is photography.
Yeah, I've been a photographer for over 40 years now. I started at drama school because I was I mean, I don't know. It was something that I'd always. I did art A level. I draw and paint and things like that. And I got a camera for my 21st birthday, a proper SLR, Olympus, do it yourself job. And we have to have headshots as actors, as you know, you get them signed and things like that. And we still do have a big directory called Spotlight, which is now just online. And when we were at drama school, I was sick and tired of seeing people ripped off for really bad photographs. Yeah. And I kept on thinking, I could do that. There's a huge assumption that actors like having their photograph taken, and they really don't, because we're not models, we're actors. It's a completely different skill. And it's really a job these days. You've got to have something for each job, because casting directors have so much imagination. Moving on swiftly. And so I was very embryonic when I was there, but there was a darkroom there. Obviously, it's pre-digital days, and one of the stage managers showed me how to, do my own processing. And the principal of the drama school seemed to like what I was doing and employed me to take the entire final year thing. And then I was very lucky when I left drama school. I worked pretty solidly for quite a few years, but then, like most actresses, you hit a brick wall at 30 and everybody stops thinking that you're interesting anymore. And I needed another income, and like most actors, you diversify, and it seemed the most convenient thing. I knew a lot of actors, so it wasn't as if I was starting from nothing. And then suddenly I became slightly more popular than I was expecting, and this is not my quote, but apparently I was one of the top 5 headshot photographers in the industry in the 1990s. But the problem is everybody thinks you've given up acting, and you go, no, it's just to keep me off the streets, And then it shifted slightly, because when the digital cameras came out, everybody went, I can do this myself. So the work just stopped. I mean, to be honest, it had become too much of a 9-to-5 job for me. I was still acting, I was still doing jobs. But it became more of a task than a pleasure. And by that time, I'd started with Big Finish. In fact, one of my sister-in-laws had told me about a book called Who Ate My Cheese? Because if you do one thing really well, and then suddenly everybody leaps on the back of it, you kind of go, oh, and then you have to find another cheese. So my other cheese was directing, as it turned out, for Big Finish. Thank God, because it, helped me a lot. But the photography, I still take the odd headshot. In fact, I've got one next week. But I just now enjoy taking photographs. I don't have anything published, but I mean, there are things online that people like, and I can, one day I might kind of put up a library of stuff. But I think we're in a very difficult situation at the moment, because we're in a world where everything is image based. We have Instagram, we have TikTok, we have all the videos and everything, and there's almost a kind of a plethora of images, So trying to do something different is not. It's how I respond to seeing things, and if people like that image, then that's lovely. But it's an awful thing to say, because it's always been a sideline. I've never taken it terribly seriously. Occasionally, I find it difficult when somebody's taken an image in a commercial sense and taken it and not put my credit on, and that's like, well, hang on a second, that's my income. But if somebody goes, oh no, I used that photograph that you took at this party, and can I use it? And because you get a lot of people being a bit snarky about it. You go, no, just use it. As long as I know about it, then that's fine.
That's better, yeah.
Weirdly, for the first time ever, I took because the phone cameras are so good these days. I took a photograph when I was up at one of my brothers for Christmas, and it was quite a sparkly sort of nice photograph of the moon and a little bit of a tree and some lights and stuff. And an old school friend of mine is a jewellery designer, and she's on Instagram, and she had a thing. And one of those reels came up on my Instagram, and it went, oh, there's lovely jewellery and loves Christmas and that. Hang on a minute, I took that photo. And she'd used it in her publicity of her site, and I didn't quite know what to because it wasn't a professionally paid photograph, but it was used in a commercial sense for her kind of, oh, isn't Christmas sparkly? And you go, yeah, it's my photo. So I put a little kind of, that looks familiar, with a little smiley, happy Christmas. And I just got an emoji back going like that. And I go, yeah, well, come on,
like you're really, ooh,
and now we're going to go into the future and we call it amusingly AI photography, actually it's not, it's plagiarism, because you
Absolutely.
cannot control the images that are out there, because obviously I have images out there of various Doctor Who things, and I know perfectly well that one day, because I have no watermark on it or copyright on it, it'll suddenly be amalgamated in something else, but you can't police that sort of thing,
Well, and
so we're going in a whole different direction here, sorry.
well, no, and I mean, it's interesting, and if once again, folks, I invite anyone to, join and get in line to ask questions, especially about the Big Finish and stuff like that. It's because you bring up the AI thing.
Everything I do is now going to be affected by AI. I haven't got a famous voice. I mean, I have a voice that's out there, and I do audiobooks, and not just for Big Finish, but for other companies as well. And I've already heard a story from a mutual friend of an actor who discovered his voice had been used as an alternative AI voice without his permission. He just stumbled on it and went, "But that's me." And you don't get remuneration, I mean, the technology is improving very fast. You can generally tell when it's a bit rubbish. And my problem is with it, and I have heard of an audiobook company, and it's not just information like map reading or reading a dictionary. This is a creative, interpretive, if I want to get too pretentious about it, you nuance a performance with your pauses, not just with how much you say and how accurately you say it.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, I do a lot of sci-fi audiobooks where you do monster voices and you do. And there will be a point where AI will make an interpretation of that. But because companies are more interested in, well, let's be honest, making profit than they are in creativity. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all of us actors. What a friend of mine called, I'm a bread and butter actor. I'm not a star. I'm a bread and butter actor.
Yeah.
And these are the people who are really being screwed by this.
Yes.
Equity in the UK has been quite firm, and we've already got things. In fact, Big Finish have already got an AI agreement within the contract saying if at any future point we are using, then we will remunerate or we will do. But it has to be written in. And of course, this is what your recent strike is. Part of your recent strike's been about.
Well, and I would think too that Big Finish just wouldn't. Because Big Finish is such a good company, that sort of moral dilemma would never be something that
currently no, and also within. I mean, we're in a very strange situation with Doctor Who, where we get actors who are playing. I'm going to say dead actors, but you know what I mean.
Well, they're not alive. I'm going to be honest. Yeah.
Recasting, and then you go, well, you don't need to recast. You just pick up William Hartnell voice, and but what do you do? I mean, I said to we are now seriously going to be in a position where we write our wills and say any future, after I am dead, any future voice that will be used in this context will either be to the benefit of my, estate or this charity, or and that's the kind of thing you'd never thought you'd even have to think about.
Right.
It's a very strange kind of hinterland we are between technologies at the moment. It's very strange.
It is strange, and it'll be interesting to see where we're going with this.
And whether, actually, I was talking to somebody this morning, and I was reading an article, because I woke up at silly o'clock on Instagram, and I can't remember what it was about now. And, it was about a guy who'd found a secret room in an old house through an old photograph of the house that he'd lived in. And I'll read this article. I went, this is a really badly written article. I couldn't work it out. I went, this has got to be AI. Because you could see they got the information, but the way that they had, it was so bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't at university, but I know, a good sentence when it's written, It was terrible. And if that's the future of AI, but the problem is then it becomes the norm. And you get kids going, that's how we write. You go, no, it isn't.
You know what's scary? It might be somebody who decided not to use AI.
There's
that too, a little bit,
Yeah, no, there is. But there was something about it that just didn't feel right. Like, obviously, I spend my life, reading scripts and reading things, and there's a, the good writers, because the turns of phrase just fall off the page, and this was like, what? It's bizarre.
It is bizarre. Now, let's go back a couple years to 1998. If I'm not mistaken, that was the year the first Bernice Summerfield audio came out.
That's right.
When you were originally asked to take this on, and knowing where you are now with it, on stage with legends like myself,
I never knew it would happen.
Right.
I can't believe it.
But in all seriousness, though, what was it like when you were first approached, and the idea of doing pretty much straight to retail audio, because it wasn't. It didn't go to radio or anything. It was literally buying the CDs or the tapes.
Yeah. I don't know whether I took that into consideration more than the fact that I thought it was a job that was going to last for 2 weeks. I mean,
Right.
this is an anecdote I've recounted a million times, so excuse me if you've heard it 5 times before. But I knew Mike Tucker, who'd been the one of the visual effects designers on Survival, and I was having supper over at his, and he said, look, there's this thing. Do you remember a guy called Gary Russell? And he'd interviewed me for a Keith Barnfather video called I Was a Doctor Who Monster. And I'd met him and we talked. And he said, anyway, and he gave me a quick rundown of this character that this company was forming. And she'd been in this, and then they'd been in that, and then they'd lost the license, and then this character carried on. And, all the stuff about the New Adventures and the BBC and Virgin and all of that stuff. And kind of went in one ear and out the other. And they said, well, they're really interested in you playing it. Because they know I'd done a lot of radio for BBC at that point, BBC Radio. And it then went very quiet. I kind of said, well, yeah, of course, I was quite happy that anybody was interested in employing me in any we're also grateful. It's sad, really. And then it's slightly arrogant to say, I thought I was just being offered the part. And then the next thing I knew, it had gone very quiet. Apparently, there was some sort of issue with the Virgin licensing and all that sort of stuff. And then the next thing I knew, I was asked to audition for it. And I went to Nick, because I didn't know who these guys were. And I have been quoted more than 1 million times to say, why is that woman with a hand up? Is this very important?
Hi.
Hi. Can we help?
I can't walk up to that mic, but I have a question from
go
the
for
audience when you're ready.
Oh, okay. Shall I finish this anecdote?
Yes.
Oh, the one that you've heard 1 million times. Sorry. I considered, because I didn't know any of them. Obviously, I'd met Gary very briefly. My first opinion was it's going to be a bunch of fanboys in the front room with a Casio recorder, And when I turned up for the audition, I wasn't disabused of that. I walked in, and it was Gary Russell, Jason Hay-Gallery, and Nick Briggs in Nick Briggs' front room with a microphone, according to him, strapped to a broom handle. I thought, this isn't BBC Radio. And I read a bit of Oh No It Isn't, which is
a broom is a boom, yeah.
Oh, well, exactly. And I read the script for Oh No It Isn't, which is bonkers in itself. I mean, for those of you who are aware of pantomime, obviously that was a British thing, but. And I kind of thought nothing of it. And I couldn't, in fact, I'd completely forgotten the name of the character that I was meant to be playing. I then went to see my friend Steve in a production of Romeo and Juliet on tour. And I don't know how, maybe I'd told our mutual friend that I was being seen for this ages ago, and I'd forgotten all about it. And he said, are you playing Bernice Summerfield? So after I saw him I said, oh, that's what her name was. I said, yeah, I've no idea, it might be. He said, you've got to play her. She's an icon. I've read all the books. And this is a Cambridge graduate we're talking about here. And I went, oh, okay. Then, obviously, I got the gig. And then I got a postcard from him with a sinking TARDIS on the front going, if there is a part called Chris Quedge or Jason Kane, can you just suggest me for it? And his name is Stephen Fuel. So I said yes, and of course, he got the gig. So, so I started this, and the first day of recording was in this disgusting studio in a basement in a very unsalubrious part of London called Elephant and Castle, run by a couple of hippies and a moth-eaten cat. And I thought, okay, with one microphone like that in the middle of the room, slightly damp carpet. And I thought, oh, good God. And then there was a man in a corner with a DAT machine. This was Alistair Locke, the genius that's Alistair Locke. And I thought, this is going to sound rubbish. I was used to, radio studios and everything, bring your bottom shoes, I'd never worked digitally before. And you've got to remember, this is 25 years ago. I mean, this is still pretty much in its infancy. And there was Nick Courtney came in. I thought, oh, it's not God, it's the Brigadier. it's good, excellent. And then a whole bunch of Nick's friends came in, including somebody I've never heard of since called Mark Gatiss.
Oh.
And
Has he done anything?
No, I don't
All
think
right.
so. I'm
All
afraid
right.
that was the end of his career, as far as I was concerned. Bless him. And we did it, and that was fine. And then they changed thank God, they changed studios after that somewhere in Hammersmith. And we did the next three, which was the Beyond the Sun. Then we did the Time Ring trilogy, which was... and these were adapted. At this point, these were still sort of adapted books, some with and without the Doctor that had to be taken out. I've just got to mention Jack Rayner, who is the most wonderful writer. And she'd adapted Oh No, It Isn't, and a lot of the others. She did such a good job. She's fantastic. And... so we recorded these three, the Time Ring trilogy, including Just War, which I don't know whether any of you have ever heard Just War. It is phenomenal. It really is. It's a good story, isn't it? It's really good. Apart from the fact, oh God, the guy who ran this studio was a bit like, he was a fan, but he was a bit like, ooh, and it's, Just War is a very, very full-on, dramatic, hard story. Set in the Second World War on German-occupied Guernsey. And about just after lunchtime, we'd done a good few hours in the morning, and we got through. He thought, this is going to sound great. You know? And he came in and, he said, I hope it went okay, because yesterday when they were here recording there, nothing recorded in the morning because of the equipment. And we went, oh, yeah. We checked, and nothing had been recorded. So we had to go back to the beginning, doing the dramatic stuff and the tears and the drama. And but actually, it came out very well. And then, of course, we're actually going back to when the first one was released. On cassette, how quaint. And I listened, I was expecting it to sound terrible, and then I listened to it, and I've got to say that I think a lot of the success in them getting the license, because obviously the BBC ended up hearing these, was the quality of Alistair Locke's post-production. Because, it was still very early days, as I said earlier, for digital recording. And it sounded phenomenal. His music, the sound effects, it was like a, cinematic experience without the pictures. And I think that carried on for those first few audios, very much so. So as we know, the BBC heard them, and then the rest is history. I then thought, goodbye, Bernice, that's never going to happen again. But it was actually Gary Russell who persuaded them to carry on.
Yeah, that's incredible. And just as an anecdote before we get back there, is that we had at a different convention, we brought in Gary Russell, and it was in July of 1999. That Gary Russell was at Convergence, and
that early.
Yes, and it was just about the time that we knew that Doctor Who was coming back in audio form, and the first story hadn't been released yet, but the idea and the excitement and everything about it, and because some of us were friends with Gary, we were able to get a sneak preview of Sirens of Time, which was the first one.
That's the one.
And it's like, wow. It was pretty, and the quality was great.
Yeah,
and
it really was. And the fact that they got everybody on board, that was like their holy grail. It really was.
It really was. Go ahead.
Question!
All right, this is from one of our remote attendees.
Hello.
Question about the photos and AI. Does having copyright on them help in any way?
It's impossible, because if it's online, even if it's copyright, Photoshop can quite easily scrub out copyright printing anywhere. I can tell you that. And unless you are looking in a very, very particular quarter of the internet, you can never tell, because most of it will be amalgamated anyway within different images. Yes, it is my copyright. It is a photographer's copyright, but trying to police that is almost impossible. That's your phone. There we go. To give you it's not an example because it's not AI. Years and years ago, I did some photos for the old Dreamwatch magazine of Alison Hannigan. We went to the hotel and took some photographs of her, and they did it as a kind of pull-out. It was the magazine cover. And then we did another shot that they did as a kind of pull-out, and it had my copyright little bit at the bottom. And within 2 seconds, it was before I was on the internet, somebody put it up, lopped off the bottom. Oh, there it is, and I don't get remunerated for that. It's always very difficult, because I don't mind people sharing my photographs as long as I get a credit. it doesn't always happen with the Big Finish stuff because that's another argument. It would be nice to say copyright Big Finish stroke Lisa Mam and copyright Big Finish Anthony, who takes the other photographs. I just think it's helpful if you do it as a living, that even if you don't get paid for it, you get the coverage, and somebody goes, oh, well, I like that photograph, I'll employ them for that. It's a bit like acting. If somebody sees something that they like, then they'll employ you for something else.
Absolutely.
Work generates work. So when somebody doesn't credit you, it's not great. Most television companies are pretty good. Sometimes they use your images for bits and bobs. I know Tom Allen pretty well, and he used a photograph that I took years ago because his agent used to be Wendy Padbury when he was acting, first of all, with hair. And they wanted a photograph for this kind of comedy thing, and I got 50 quid. So, marvellous, thank you.
Well, and I have to apologize. I turned this panel into a masterclass of legal, and we're going to be doing this for the rest of the weekend. So we have Jason's approval to turn this into. We're going to bring some lawyers in for the rest of the weekend and have
we can double check on all of our quotes. That's good.
And as a reminder, folks, if you have questions, you don't have to go back where Natasha is, even though that's where she is. You can go and use the microphone in the corner or in the center. That's not a corner.
Somebody coming to them.
No. There we go.
We do. Thank you very much.
Well, unfortunately, I have more to talk to her about. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm just curious. I'd like to talk to you about, or hear you talk about your memories of when you were making Survival.
Oh my God, yeah.
So long ago, right?
Yes.
Fabulous story.
Oh.
When I watch, and I think when other people watch it too, there's a kind of Ace and Cara feel like they could be romantic.
Well, this lesbian undercurrent has been a subplot has been talked about a lot.
Cool. Just curious, were you aware of that when you were making it, or I'm just curious about your thoughts on that. Yeah.
Absolutely not. I was more concerned about staying on the horse. It was very difficult because Una's script is absolutely fantastic, and you read it and it was great. But because the production was so full on, because it wasn't just the technical stuff, the makeup, the location, the heat, the BBC strike, we had to get things done because everybody was just had to walk out. That suddenly the subplots just went out of the window, and dear old Alan, I don't think he'd even thought about it, And it wasn't until I met Rona that I had any idea there was an SBS subplot. I mean, it was just me. There's a very funny bit where when they run together in slow-mo. Well, at that point, I pulled a muscle really, really badly in my leg because when you're, they don't start in the makeup, but they put me in riding boots as well as that, and I'm meant to be this cheetah, fastest animal on earth. I mean, trying to run in sand in riding boots, and I pulled my muscle. There's a bit where she runs down the hill, and oh God, it was one thing after another. And I could barely limp along, so they had to do it double slow speed in order to make it look terribly fast. And I think that's the point where you're meant to go, oh, that's great, they're really getting it together. And we're just going, no, I'm just trying to run. It's a disappointment because, I don't honestly know whether we would have done any different performance, to be honest, because it was all in the script. And I think that connection, whether it be that sort of connection or not, I don't know. I would personally think it's more of a connection of understanding the freedom or that apparent freedom of that character and being lured into that kind of wild thing. I'd say that's my preference, but it's... How would you have manifested that? I mean, it's Doctor Who, so it's back in the 80s. So if you wish to see that, then I don't think there's any problem with seeing it that way. Let's put it that way. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Thank you very much for that.
Good question.
See, it's not scary. You can go and see. Oh, look at this. All right, well done. See, folks, it can happen.
Hi. How early did you know you wanted to be a performer, and what was it like as an actress starting out in Britain?
Well, there goes my next question.
I've got two older brothers, one of whom is an actor. He's 10. There's 14 years and 10 years between my two brothers, and my middle brother was an actor, and on a sideline, I became involved with a very active youth theatre in the local professional theatre when we used to have, in the old days, we used to have a lot of regional theatre in the UK. And I was very lucky to work in a very professional environment. Weirdly, my parents had met during the war doing amateur theatre, so it was just, they loved it, they loved theatre and whatever. My brother had already been to university doing something else, and then, he ended up in acting. When I said, it was really difficult, because there's a thing in the old days, back in the 70s, 80s, that used to fill out in order to go to university. And I knew I didn't want to go to university. I knew I wanted to go to drama school. I got the bug, and people talk about the bug. I used to do careers evenings at my old school, and you could see the relief on the parents' face when I said, if you can think of anything else you'd rather do than this, go and do it. Go and have a nice time doing some amateur stuff, but you have to, it's a sort of illness, that there's nothing else you'd rather do. And I loved it, and I loved theatre. I mean, I was in youth theatre from the age of 14 up to about 18, something like that. And I spear carried in the main house. I helped with stage management. We did tours. The youth theatre used to do tours. I mean, it was a really great place to start before you went to drama school. And I just knew that's what I wanted to do, It isn't easy, even back then. I mean, auditioning for drama school was very difficult, because it was difficult to get in. There were very few places. Most local authorities had two different types of grant. We used to get grants in those days for education. And one was mandatory, which you got automatically if you went to an academic university. And the other was discretionary, if you did a vocational course, which I could never understand, because I actually think vocational courses should be treated as seriously as academic courses. Each to their own. Everybody has their different skills. And I decided I wanted to go to drama school. My parents were horrified and decided that to try and get my brother to tell me that I really didn't want, they all thought I wanted to be an actor because of my brother, and it wasn't. It was something I really wanted to do. And the youth theatre guys seemed to think I could do it, that I was worth, applying for drama school. And I wanted to go to the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School. I had a very good reputation, other than the fact also there were very few girls' places. There was only 4 girls' places on the course that I was at, the 3-year course that I was at. And the amounts of people who applied, the women to men ratio were scary numbers. But they tend not, in those days, they tend not to take you straight out of school, because they want to know that you really want to do it. So they like to see people take a year out, or, just to test the water. But my brother said, well, look, if you really want to, just go straight out of school and see where you get. Well, I did, and I got on the short list, and my parents were like, oh my God, because I'd agreed to do a secretarial course before drama school if I'd got in. So I said to Bristol, look, this is great, but actually this is what I've agreed. And they went, don't worry, come back next year for the recalls. And that was not going to guarantee me a grant. So I applied to a lot of other drama schools, the London drama schools that you've heard of, all the good ones. And to cut an extremely long story short, I did the course, the secretarial course. I auditioned for Bristol, and I got in. And my father thought it was nepotism, because the guy who'd taken over had given my brother his first job. And I said, but there are only 4 girls' places. That's not, So then I auditioned for Guildhall, which was a very good school, and I got in there. And I got into Central, and I got into Lambda. And by the end, my father went, okay. And they were really supportive the entire time. Then we cut, sorry, this is quite dull, but then we cut to when you leave drama school. When I left drama school, Equity, the union, was very, very strong in terms of what you could and couldn't do. It was a closed shop. We were not, even though you'd done 3 years training, we were not allowed to do television, film, #1 tours, or West End before we had done 42 weeks paid equity work, either in regional theatre or in cabaret. And I was very lucky. I mean, I worked a lot, and I got my card quickly, but you'd get these people going, darling, we think, oh, marvellous, but come back when you've got the experience. And then they changed the goalposts, because within 18 months, 2 years, the closed shop had opened up. Our generation, our years at all the drama schools went back to these guys and said, here we are, experience. They went, no, we're using the students now, because they were cheaper. So my theory is that actually my generation of drama students are actually a lost generation, because everybody after us went into films, and they've all gone, you know. And you know, people like Mark Strong and you know, Sean Pertwee and all those guys were just after me. And I think only one person in our entire kind of era was Steve Delane, who was, you know, he had his eye on the goal, let's put it that way. And he's obviously a good actor, but he's the only one, and most of us we are bread and butter actors. That's what we do, that's what we are. Yeah.
That's really interesting. You know, one thing that I'm also getting from the story that you're talking about, as far as, and I think it's a great reminder for anybody out there who has a passion, who has a dream, who has, you know, what it takes to get there, right? Because you have to sometimes go up against the people that you love, and that you know that they are looking for the best outcome for you, but you have to keep persevering.
The thing is, the industry is almost automatically set against you. Yeah. Because however good you are, people go, oh, cream always rises to the top. Well, it isn't. It's luck. Most of the time, the people who have, even the best actors in the world will go, in fact, I saw an old interview with Glenda Jackson that was on TV a couple of weeks ago. And Michael Parkinson, who was a very well-known interviewer, was interviewing her, and they said, well, you know, you must have been considered brilliant. She goes, there are a lot of people I work with in rep who I would consider much better than me, but I had the luck. And he said, oh, no, I disagree. Cream rises to the top. Now, of course, she's fantastic, but I know people who I think, why the hell weren't they? Why are they not stars?
Yeah.
You know, you get one fantastically big agent who decides who to cherry pick. And my pleasure in being a director, even though it's a day's work for tuppence halfpenny, you know, is that I can use my favourite actors. They're not necessarily famous, but you know, I know the ones who can do the job.
Well, and you see that, you do see that throughout. And I'll talk about British television in the sense of, like, you think about like David Croft. You know, and David Croft had so many of the same people, like Gordon Kay.
Oh yeah, there was
like a little
yeah,
rep,
yeah,
totally. Molly Sugden.
My old friend Sam Kelly was.
Sam.
I miss him so much. He's just fantastic. One of my favourite actors. And there is that. I mean, you can look at 50s films from 40s and 50s, and it's the usual. In British films, you know, you have a very small coterie of actors, but they always worked, and they were always great character actors. I wouldn't be a drama student now if you paid me, because it's kind of free for all now. I was discussing earlier on with in that little, I did a kind of a little Q&A earlier, is that acting, especially amongst the young now, has become a lifestyle choice as opposed to a passion. And it's very difficult. I do sometimes wonder whether they know what the job is. There's this thing at the moment about you can only play yourself, you can only play people like you, you can only play the kind of... That's not the joy of the job.
Right.
And when I'm casting for radio, you've not got just the physical thing, that obviously physically it doesn't really matter what you look like, but there's a process vocally in producing different characters, in creating different characters, that is not putting funny voices on like some of us do for aliens, but something subtle about the rhythm, about the quality of the voice, and all the things that makes you what we do a skill in a way.
Yeah.
And it's kind of out of the window, because you get a lot of young actors who go, oh no, but I don't feel that, or it's not really me. And you come back, oh no, it's not really you, that's not your name on the script,
right,
I'm sorry, that's the, you know. As an actor, you use your own life experience sometimes, but most of the time, you use your empathy for a character. That is quite unfashionable now, because you have to be the real thing. You have to have gone through the mill in your life in order to play. My problem is that people go, you're too middle class, you've never suffered. And you think, but I'm an actor, you know, I have emotions, I can key into that, you know.
Right.
But of course, if you have the real thing you know, you're not going to cast somebody thick to play thick, because you're never going to get the performance. You know, that's an extreme example, but, you know.
If they're thick, they don't know they're thick.
Well, exactly. I'm not saying you kind of comment so much on that, but it's sometimes it's useful to be a step away from the person that you are portraying. It's a bit like directors. You're talking about Ang Lee directing Brokeback Mountain. You know, he has no cultural reference to that, but he got it absolutely right because he's an observer and he can, you know, obviously he'll refer to people who do know, but. You know.
That's what acting is, though.
It's acting is. And also, you know, this assumption that if you are like that, you are a good actor doesn't necessarily tally. I mean,
Right.
I believe really, however much we talk about drama school, you can do it or you can't. You can get better, but if you can't do it in the first place, in my experience, you never really get any better. You know.
I suppose some people just plateau at a certain level, and
True,
that's
true.
kind of
And
it.
some people, I know a few actors who I'm thinking, how have you carried on? But they tick a box physically. And there's a guy who's, I know, is 6'7". He ticks the box. He's really useful to play heavies. He's not a great actor, but he's got a career, you know.
Yeah.
And you've got to be quite philosophical about that. It can be very frustrating. And I think acting generally, you say, what is it like being an actress in the situation? Being an actor generally is a case of managing expectation. It's how you deal with the. You've got to have the hide of a rhinoceros. I mean, it makes me laugh now that a lot of young actors are talking about trigger points, and I need my safe space, and I need to have my this and that. You go, you're in the wrong industry, mate, because really, I was talking to some students a while ago, and I said, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. Absolutely honest, because a lot of my friends who are working in drama schools at the moment are having a terrible time because they can't even give notes because people are going, oh, you're hurting my feelings. You go, what? I mean, there's a way of giving notes and giving notes. I know that, but I said, you know, whatever people might say and ever many platitudes they might give you, from the moment you walk through that door or you walk on that stage, people will judge you. You'll be too short, too fat, too slim, too dark, too light, too blonde, too dark. I mean, this is what our life is.
Yeah.
The gatekeepers don't always get it right.
No.
And that's the way you deal with it is how you survive, you know.
And they kind of think, isn't it kind of like a lot of these, casting directors or whoever is trying to cast, it's almost like a straw man sort of situation where the main thing is to rip the person apart, to make sure they get to the right, what they think is the right attributes.
Yeah, I mean, it's so subjective. I mean, I've seen casting that I've thought, you're idiots. I could have given you 5 actors that could have done that job better. But it's opportunity. And of course, because the structure of the industry, and I'm sure it's the same here, if you're not with a big agent, I did a panel at Chicago TARDIS with Janet Fielding and the lovely Rachel Talalay and and Katie Manning, and we were talking about Janet said if she'd known that the streamers were coming along, she'd just stayed being an agent because this is great. We got all this work for the act. And I was trying to say, yes, if you're with a big agent.
Yeah.
For those of us who aren't, it's a closed book. I can't get seen for roles any more than 5 lines. I cannot. I will not. I know I'm subbed for things that are interesting, but it's not going to happen. I've got to resign myself that you don't get discovered in the year 60s, and that you get to a point, and I'm so grateful for Big Finish, because to have an opportunity to play Bernice, even if it's niche and nobody's heard of it, for that long, it's an absolute pleasure because it's what I do for a job, but I cannot translate that into anything else. And that's my own situation, and I have to deal with it. But you've got to be realistic, And you were talking about following your dream, and I think sometimes that is an unuseful phrase because people will go, just keep at it, and you'll follow your dream, and it'll happen, and it doesn't. And I think and sometimes it does.
But it's a reality,
isn't
it?
The odds are very slim.
Yeah.
And that's how you manage your whole career, really. Sorry, that sounds terribly bitter, and it's not meant to, but it's the reality of the situation. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Sure. Question about another actor. I mean, as a director, but what made David Warner so special as an actor?
I'm biased. Don't ask me. Bless him. Do you know, he was 101% instinctive. There was nothing he hated training. He couldn't tell you about technique. I mean, I think the biggest, he was in an interview once, and I think the most serious note he gave about when somebody said, could you give advice to a young actor? And he went, yeah, don't run with scissors. You know, I mean, that was the level he operated, because he couldn't analyze what he did. He actually didn't want to be an actor. His going into acting was his escape from his life. And that sounds very serious, but that was completely and utterly. And somebody at his school, in one of his many schools, had spotted the fact he was good. And I think somebody had suggested, because he was involved in amateur theatre in the Midlands, as you probably know, in the UK. And somebody suggested he audition for drama school, that his father said, that. No, his father dropped a tray and then said, actually, I tell you, lad, he's got Royal in front of it. You audition for Royal, you know, RADA, as it was, you know. And he got in. I don't think he had a particularly thrilling time, but, you know, he got a bronze medal. But then his expectation was he was going to spear carry all his life. But he had such a particular look, even when in his younger days. He was, I am biased, but he was extraordinary. There's been nobody like him before or since. And he was completely unaware of it. You know, you talk to people who knew him at RADA, and he was a strange boy. He was a very strange boy. He had undiagnosed bipolar. He dealt with it in a very particular way, but it wasn't until he was at the very early days of the RSC, and he was playing a small part in a thing called A Four-Night Come at the Arts Theatre, and Peter Hall spotted him. It's as simple as that, and asked him to audition for the histories, where, you know, Henry VI, Richard the, and he thought it was for the understudy. And they went, no, for the real part. I mean, he was racked with stage fright, even in those days. But the people who saw him both as, in fact, if you go on to, you can't say BBC iPlayer showed all the histories recently, you know, the Wars of the Roses, and it's actually available in a slightly fuzzy form on YouTube, and BFI released it. And you watch him, and he was 23 when he did that. And he's like it's a bit like Matt Smith, you know, old head on young shoulders, you know. Yeah. And he just had it, and he had the voice. He didn't go to university. He worked hard to try and understand what it was, but also when he did his Hamlet, I've lost count of the numbers of people who've said, he changed my life when I saw his Hamlet. They said it was the first time they really felt they understood Shakespeare. I think there was a lot in Hamlet he recognized. He worked very hard at that. He'd spend a lot of evenings with Peter Hall at his place in Stratford. And people just found him fascinating. You couldn't take your eyes off him on screen. I mean, regardless of all the later genre stuff. As you know, Sam Peckinpah just found him amazing. They had a very good friendship, he and Sam. And there's an interview with David that's online recounting the fact that he got a phone call from Sidney Lumet saying, you're just about to get a phone call from a guy called Sam Peckinpah. I urge you to work with this man. And, you know, he wasn't his agent, he worked with Sidney. And he apparently, Sam Peckinpah had seen him in Morgan, Suitable Case for Treatment, and said, I want that guy from Morgan in this. It was a Ballad of Cable Hogue, is what he was. I don't know if any of you seen it. It's a wonderful film. It's very gentle for, you know, you think Sam Peckinpah's going to be, or whatever. But Sidney Lumet had been in the edit room while he was editing The Wild Bunch and just said it was the most extraordinary thing he'd ever seen. So he got the gig, and the day before he was meant to fly out to the desert, he had a panic attack, and he didn't want to fly. He rang the agent. He said, I'm sorry, I can't go. I can't do this job. I cannot fly. I can't do. And his agent said, well, you know, you've lost the job. And he went, absolutely. About a day later, he gets the call from the agent saying, now, look, this is what's going to happen. And I can't remember all of it, but it's case you will get on a train at King's Cross. It will take you all the way to Madrid. Then you are going to get on a boat that's going to take you to New York. At New York, you're going to get on a train that will take you to there. You're going to change trains there. Then that will take you to... And Sam Peckinpah was so determined to have David that he waited, the production waited, and it took him 2.5 weeks to get there. Wow. And then it's very interesting because obviously so I'm diverging slightly, but Sam Peckinpah has a very particular reputation, as you know. I mean, he was a drinker, he was, a very complicated life, kind of a tortured genius, if you like, but he was quite full on. But he loved David, and he could never understand it. And I said, it's because you were in no competition. You weren't a he-man. You were a gentle, distracted, talented, interesting person. And of course, he ended up doing 2 more movies with him, Straw Dogs and Cross of Iron. And it's, but going back to what made him so extraordinary is his instinct. And I had the most enormous pleasure working with him so many times. I'm not just on Benny, but on Sapphire and Steel, and that's where we first met, and it was... it's a shorthand. When you work with somebody that good, you can't... it seems churlish considering our relationship that I'm saying this, but because I was a fan, but of course I was a fan. Every actor's a fan of David's, I think also what made him quite special is that he didn't play the game. He didn't go to first nights. He wasn't a people person at all. He didn't like crowds and all that sort of stuff. And when he did turn up, he was very charismatic, because obviously he was so tall. I don't know whether any of you met him at any of the conventions in the past. Of all things, he really took to conventions. It's extraordinary. He loved them. I know. I wish he'd been here. He would have, he did very good conventions.
We do too. We do too.
Absolutely. And we obviously we miss him like absolute mad. But he was a very exceptional talent and a lovely man.
Sure.
Yeah. Thanks for the question.
Thank you so much. We have a few minutes left here. Do we have another question from the interweb?
Actually, this one's from me.
Of course it is. When I say it's from the interweb, it's from you. Okay. I know how this works.
Thank you for the stories. I would like to know, what is some of your favorite stories, your favorite book or show or movie that you would recommend to the world?
Oh, God. Well, the thing is, it's probably the last thing I saw, or the last thing I read. Weirdly, I don't read as much as I should, purely because I spend my life reading Big Finish scripts. And occasionally you trip up on a script going, oh, that's good. Can I just say, and these aren't out, and I don't know when they're meant to be out, and I haven't even got the first edits yet. I've just done, this is nothing, it's still Doctor Who related. I just directed 2 Torchwood stories written by Gareth David Lloyd, which were, God, have I done a spoiler? Damn it. Which were phenomenal. Are the best. He is such a good writer. It was, oh God, that's going on the internet now, and I'm thinking Big Finish.
Now
keep
it secret, or we'll hunt you all down.
I'll lose my job. They were absolutely fantastic, and I want you to keep an eye out for them. I'm not going to give you the titles; you'll see them when they come out. But when you see something that good, I was exceptionally lucky getting my first choice of actors. They were both set in Wales. They're very good. They're quite personal, and they are amazing.
And I know I don't want to hijack your question, but because we're running out of time, but Bernice is going to be with the Ninth Doctor.
Oh yes, Chris Eccleston. That's right.
Right?
Very briefly, only one episode. I was saying earlier on in that little panel I did earlier today, is the extraordinary thing about Bernice as a character that Paul Cornell created is that she weirdly seems to be able to interact with every Doctor, regardless of which Doctor it is. It's extraordinary. Obviously, I think I've worked with 3 or 4, and the dialogue, as long as the writers understand, Bernice, because you've got to be very careful with that character. If you give her too many jokes, it just doesn't work at all. She gets very irritating, and you want to smack her. Apart from that, but I do say, can we just cut that one, occasionally. But it proved the fact that, working with Chris, who I knew actually through David, they were very, very good mates. They'd worked together. So, yeah. I mean, I look forward to hearing it.
Not shabby, huh? No.
Next month.
Next month, February, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I was actually going to reach out to Big Finish, ask if there's any way we can get a clip to hear, but then I forgot.
Yeah,
so
well,
there is that as well.
the answer
Hey,
to that-
February's coming up.
No, I don't think there's a trailer up yet either. So yeah.
Yeah.
And she's appeared with a few other people I can't mention yet. But yes.
So
that's out for
a lot of good things coming up.
Well, yes, and I've just done another box set, which is now just Bernice box set. So yeah, I don't know when that's out, but
Wow.
she's still here. Thank God, 25 years. Who'd have thought it?
And still directing a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
and-
well, I mean, not as much. I'm not as involved as I used to because all my lines pretty much have finished. Jago and Lightfoot, and I did some Blake 7, but unfortunately, very, very sadly, Stephen Greif passed away. So unfortunately, that was put on hold. I have just directed. That hasn't been announced. Don't think
They can keep
I
a
have.
secret,
No,
right? We can
no,
keep a secret.
No, on the internet. No. But that was much more Doctor Who related. I don't know whether I can mention it. Don't think I can. But it's out quite soon in spring. But I don't think it's been announced.
Hey, it's
But
We're all friends
that
here.
Was much more. I haven't done a full-on sort of wham bam alien zappy, I'm a baddie kind of thing for years because all the Torchwood stuff is a little bit more esoteric and a bit more ghost story based. So actually, this was it's a long time since I've done that kind of full-on sci-fi thing. So yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And one question I was going to ask, if you can answer in 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's okay.
When you're directing, I mean, is it fair to say that there are actors who can do screen, like television, film, plays, whatever, but that doesn't mean that they can translate into audio?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Audio acting is much more akin to theatre acting than it is to television. You get a lot of young kids who think a microphone and you can't. Oh, come on, give it some welly. You have to give permission to. I mean, this sounds like I'm being generalising, but you've got to give permission to younger actors to go for it. You say it'll feel over the top. It won't be, because when I was trained, we trained for theatre, and television was sort of peripheral. And now everybody's screen acting, I want to be a star, screen acting, and they think it's the same thing. It absolutely isn't.
Yeah.
So you encourage people to be as over the top. I always say, I hesitate to say milk it, but go for it,
Right.
And generally, once you've given them permission to enjoy themselves, they're okay.
Yeah, because I suppose it's because you're probably not there isn't really a whole lot of people reacting when you're doing any sort of audio recording. I mean, as far as like
you live in
eyeline
your
and stuff.
ears. I mean, I'm not a fan of having to look at actors when I'm doing other people when I'm doing audio, because when you've got the earphones on, you are in an audio world, and you're automatically weirdly listening. You're self-policing. You've kind of. I did recently a series called a well-known soap opera on radio called The Archers in the UK, and they still record in the old-fashioned way with the one microphone
And
and,
they're all
bring your
in
hard-bottom
line,
shoes and all that. And I found it very detaching because I'm so used to having the audio world in my ear. I couldn't judge because the microphones have got much better in the last 40 years since I started doing radio, how intimate you could get and how close you could get, because I was so used to judging it in my ears. But yeah, there we go.
That's fantastic. It's and Archers have been going on for what, 700 years now?
About that.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah. And dear old Tim Benting has been playing David Archer for just about the same amount of time. And Terry Malloy, of course. Terry was in it for 40 years.
That's
Terry
right.
Malloy, yeah.
And I think they were first recorded on wire recording, right?
Down the line. Marconi, yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
This was fantastic.
Oh, lovely.
And thank you very much. Now go home.
Yeah, go to sleep.